Welcome to Trending in Education. Mike Palmer here. Really happy today to have a return engagement. Tony Wan from Reach Capital is back on the show again. Tony, welcome to Trending in Education.
Thanks, Michael. Happy to be back for a second round.
Exactly. It's been known to be habit forming. You do qualify for a refrigerator magnet with your third appearance. For this engagement, we wanted to talk about ASU GSV, which is an EdTech education conference that's been going on for many years. It's something you covered when you were at EdSurge. It's now something that, Reach Capital has been very much focused on over the years. So we're going to get some of your takes on that. You're also someone who generously founded a spreadsheet that is now an Airtable, a way of understanding the conference scene for folks who care about education and what's going on in that universe. And then you may even get a couple of sizzling takes on Web3 and other phenomena out there in the world around us. Does that sound like a fair reckoning of what we described for today's episode?
It sounds like it. The thing they say about plans is plans are useless, but planning is invaluable. So it sounds like a start. We'll see where we end up from there. Love that you called me a founder of a spreadsheet. I mean, I think that's a great kind of qualification for being a founder.
Yeah. By this point, if people don't have founder on their LinkedIn, they're just not creative about their professional life is the way I think about it. But yeah, you're someone who I think last we talked, you were just starting at Reach Capital. You were getting their content program organized, and your background prior to that was educational press, educational media,
Journalism.
Journalism. There you go. Journalism.
At EdSurge.
At EdSurge, exactly. And that was in addition to the spreadsheet, you were in on the founding of EdSurge as well.
Yeah, starting from a newsletter, and from there, then on building a newsroom, building a news team out of that. And that team is still covering a lot of what's happening in the EdTech space today.
Absolutely. And one of the things that happens in the EdTech space is people get together at conferences, frequently IRL, in real life. They get together.
Yep.
They congregate at hotel lobby bars and conference rooms and, even outdoor gala events, who knows? And
it's how human society has evolved.
Exactly. The world of conferencing in the 21st century. One of the conferences that has become a fixture for folks who are trying to understand, EdTech venture space, EdTech capital markets, what are people investing in? Where is the buzz? Has been the ASU GSV conference, which was held at the beginning of April in San Diego. I was thinking about going. I decided not to go this year, but it is on my radar. I have been in the past, and it was really a great experience when I was out there. You're someone who's now been at this conference in a couple different ways. And then also early April of 2022 is the first time we could get closer to what's now the old school model of a conference like this. You wrote up your impressions, but I'd love to get your response now. Like, what was it like? What were you going there to get out of it? What was your experience like?
ASU GSB has always been kind of the premier conference for the EdTech industry. It is the brainchild of the GSB team, and they're, very active investors in the EdTech space and beyond. And so, for over a decade, this conference has grown. Over the years, it started as a small gathering of a few hundred people in Arizona, affiliate of ASU. That's, where the name comes from. And now, it's kind of a beast of its own in a good way in terms of attracting these days, not just the capital investments and the banker side of the industry, but increasingly also a lot of the thought leaders, the educators, the people, in this community who we hope that this capital will help improve the lives and opportunities for the students, the learners, the teachers. So, this year, if there were a headline, it would be that, the boys are back in town, the boys and gals are back in town, the money's back in town. It was, in terms of energy, it reminded me of everything that was happening, in 2019 or 2018 for the pandemic, in terms of just the flurry of activity, all the concurrent sessions going on. There's almost like a music festival feel to it, where there's like 5 stages and you got to pick and choose between one. And people are bustling, hustling between, one session and one meeting to the next. And
Yeah.
I would say, that's the headline, right? I
Yeah.
think in the past, sometimes there'd be some big news or big deals that were saved to be announced on stage as a really splashy way to get news out. Don't think there was any of that nature this year, but I just think that to see, people coming back in person and having these serendipitous conversations in hallways or at happy hours, I think that's what this year was about, at least, from my perspective.
Makes sense. Just to clarify, can you catch folks up a little bit in terms of who you're representing and what Reach was looking to accomplish?
Yeah, brief introduction. Reach Capital is a early stage investor in education and future of work companies. And we've been investing in EdTech since Reach started in 2015. But even before that, our origins traces back to a seed fund that was affiliated with a nonprofit called New Schools Venture Fund. So we've been investing in EdTech for, I would say, over a decade.
Mhm.
I think at least our founding team partners have been. And so it's a conference where you go to kind of hear about the latest trends, about what's happening. It attracts a lot of startups and founders as well. GSV does this startup competition called the GSV Cup, and we've had a couple of Reach portfolio companies that were contestants or
Yeah.
participants in that. One of them won third place.
Nice.
Actually, it is a company called Clayful, and we also help facilitate and moderate conversations too. This year, 3 of us were on sessions talking about things from early childhood education to the math skills crisis to this thing called Web3 that, you may have heard of. And so I think just helping to be part of the conversation about what's happening, what's going on, what we see happening, what's coming around the corner.
Mm.
And also just to reconnect with a lot of our peers or colleagues present and past, connect with our portfolio companies. We did a little happy hour during one of the nights, and it was just good to, see a lot of your friends in this space, kind of just in person.
Yeah.
Of course, there is the more work and opportunistic side of things. You have meetings with people in the industry who you may want to work with or invest in or partner with in some ways. And so this has always been a great venue for that.
Mhm.
Some people just sit at one table and just like, schedule 15 minutes from dusk to dawn, from dawn to dusk, and just take notes very diligently. So, God bless them. I don't know how one can do that. But there's also people with private suites and hosting partner meetings,
Yeah.
all sorts of things. It's always been a little bit of a choose your own adventure experience. In the past, as a reporter, I'd be kind of running around trying to get the latest scoop on things,
Right.
try to get the intel on the latest deals coming in. This year in my role now, I'm still doing something similar, but, just meeting interesting entrepreneurs with interesting ideas.
Right. And your role with Reach is to help communicate to your audience and your investors and the companies you're investing in. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Because I thought that was an interesting wrinkle with your background from EdSurge now moving to the fund side.
Yeah, so I'm the head of investor content and I oversee our content operations. And that's both internal content, just within ourselves and with our LPs, and also some of the public facing content and thought leadership and research that we produce to just help educate, the broader community. I believe that a smarter community leads to a smarter industry and hopefully leads to smarter capital deployed to ideas that will actually work and make an impact. And in the course of our work, we do a lot of research, we talk to a lot of people, and, I want to take some of that, take what we can share from that and share it with the public. So
Yeah.
that's what it means as head of investor content. And yeah, it's kind of like building up a little bit of a newsroom habit and process in a
Mhm.
venture capital firm. Our partners do a lot of writing, a lot of memo writing. We've got a pretty strong memo culture, kind of
Yeah.
taking from Amazon's kind of memo culture. I love writing. I think it forces you to crystallize and articulate your ideas. And so, there's a lot of good stuff good cache of resources and materials that we've amassed over the years.
Yeah. And for those of us who are on Twitter and will continue to stay on Twitter, who knows? Who knows nowadays? This is
I don't know.
my first
Are
interview.
you staying on?
I think so. I think so. I don't know until I need
Yeah.
to leave. I don't know where I'll go, but Tony is a really interesting follow where you're not just curating, Reach Capital content. You're also presenting some of your independent takes on the broader experiences of life that are out there. So I would say if folks enjoy this appearance, check out Tony Wan on Twitter at Tony Wan. It's very easy to
Yeah.
remember as well. So you can get a lot of this type of content there as well as at Reach. And if folks want to find out more at Reach, where should they go?
Reachcapital.com is our website. Reach Fund is our Twitter handle.
Okay, got it. Got it.
If you want more industry specific, you actually want to learn things, I would follow the Reach Fund handle.
Got it.
If you're into, the occasional shit post, I guess you can follow me, but no guarantees that you'll derive any value from following me.
Exactly. Although one of the things I did see was you retweeted Frank Catalano, who shared the latest version of the EdTech industry conference. It's now an Airtable. I mentioned that you were someone who got this rolling to begin with, and it's still going strong. Coming out of ASU GSV, I was at South by Southwest EDU. So those are two conferences this year that happen that are in this general space. There's a lot more on the horizon. One of the things I wanted to do as well while we had you today was get some perspective from you on which conferences make sense for which types of audiences. How have you broken this down over the years? Are there any trends you're noticing around the conference scene looking forward? We'll share out in the show notes the Airtable where this is all documented. It's nice, it's sortable, it's good stuff here. But any thoughts broadly on how this came together and how folks can make good use of it heading into the rest of the year?
Yeah, so the origins of the EdTech conference calendar, it was a side project that we did at EdSurge in the course of our mission to just inform and educate the broader EdTech community, compiled this list of events, national events that were happening throughout the course of the year. We used to make a PDF out of it, make it a nice flashy calendar. When the pandemic hit, all the dates changed because, things got canceled, and decided to just, stick with a good and trusty spreadsheet to make it easier to just track the changes that are happening. Of course, the pandemic kind of dealt the blow to the any industry conferences, right? And as a result, a lot of the associations and a lot of the organizations as well, whose lifeblood was, an annual event that attracted a lot of sponsor dollars, a lot of registration dollars. The nonprofit that acquired EdSurge, ISTE, a lot of their activity was their annual conference, right?
Yeah.
And that took a hit during the pandemic. And, fortunately, we did see some associations and conferences kind of just cancel permanently. It was fortunately a death knell. A lot of it moved virtual. But now, in 2022, at least in the US, we kept up this calendar to see what's happening. And suffice to say, there's like almost 130 national EdTech events that we tracked that were slated to happen this year. And this is a number that I think is comparable to previous years. I think, main difference is that a lot of these conferences are now going virtual, or they have like a hybrid component, which, having attended some of these, it can be a tricky experience to try to pull off. But, I think that if ASU GSB and South by Southwest are any indication, I think that there is a yearning and hankering for people to, come together in person, to meet, to socialize, for all of the things and sensory delights that you don't get from talking over Zoom or some other, internet mediated interactions.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think the conference's calendars, Frank Catalano, who is a longtime friend of EdSurge and who I've worked with over the years, he is updating that every couple of weeks. That's also his Twitter handle, Frank Catalano. And yeah, you should follow him for, the latest updates to events happening.
And anything trend wise, anything you're noticing just around what is on the horizon for you personally, or any advice for folks who are trying to figure out which conferences to go to or which ones to take virtually? I've been struck by how great a lot of the recordings are that are sent out after some of these, but then it becomes more, how do I motivate myself to power through which recorded videos that are available to us? It's a paradox of choice just because there's so much good stuff out there. What about making the decision to actually go to a conference rather than take it online? Or I like to say I JOMO it. I embrace the joy of missing out and I rationalize all the reasons why I'm better off not going. But I also occasionally choose to go. How do you go through that decision calculus? And do you have any advice for folks who are trying to make those types of decisions?
Well, conferences, it is an investment of time and of money. And so you should go with a purpose in mind. The audience for this conference calendar are industry people and business people. So, one of the things we've done is we've tried to highlight in this calendar, what particular set of the market the speakers and programs kind of focuses on, whether it's early childhood, K-12, higher ed, or workforce for training. I think that's kind of a more obvious and natural in shaping where you want to go to. Some of these conferences are on like a national scale, like ASGSD or South by Southwest, but some of these are more regional, they attract more regional audiences, right? There, for example, like, Ohio, there's like an EdTech conference for, the schools and districts there, and something similar for the Midwest, for
Hmm.
Nebraska, for Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
And so, if you're kind of your business objective or marketing objectives are kind of more regional, I think that's another way to kind of inform where you want to go,
Yeah.
where you want to put your money and time into. And then, some of these also are kind of catered more to the business and the industry side of the community, versus some of these are more about like how-to workshops, for teachers and educators, like
Hmm. Hmm.
how do I use, Nearpod or Google to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, I would say the intent of this calendar is to try to provide enough information to help you make at least that first level of filter and narrow it down,
Mhm.
and provide the links and resources you need to dig deeper and see what the programming is, who your speakers are, and see if it's right, if it may be right for you.
Yeah, see what the weather's like, see what baseball teams are in town, whether you have Marriott's points to be spent in that particular location. There's plenty of ideas that are out there.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have
there are
to
plenty
juggle.
of columns. There are plenty of columns that you can add to this calendar, Michael.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, it's a great resource. We'll be sharing that out. And then the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about some of the more interpersonal elements, the serendipity, the seeing people in person who you hadn't seen before, that's until the metaverse and Web3 matures, Tony, to the point that we don't have to leave our homes to go to these conferences. The other area that we wanted to tease a little bit is Web3, which is, I like to say, zeitgeisty at least once an episode. Web3 is pretty zeitgeisty. It's on the Gartner hype cycle somewhere and maybe peaking. Maybe it's time to check yourself before you wreck yourself. Web3. I know
Mm.
it's something Reach has been looking at, because if you are thinking about education and the future of learning, these new technology sets and ecosystems that are emerging are clearly going to have some use to the future of edtech and education. Where are you coming at the world of Web3 from? Do we need to put our virtual reality glasses on, or like where are we in this universe?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that what you described, the transition from, in-person conferencing to, Oculus and meeting in virtual meeting rooms, it sounds to me like there's a little bit of Web3 that's associated with, Second Life. I don't know
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
did a lot of Second Life.
I remember it.
There's the element of, when people describe the metaverse, it sounds like Second Life, and that it's, trying to make a comeback. And look, it was cool for a hot second.
Yeah.
Um, but I think people just, realized that, at the time the technology couldn't really, replicate as much of kind of the capabilities and interactions that maybe we're capable of today. But speaking of Web3, I think it's important to like kind of distinguish between Web3 and the metaverse a little bit. I think what's exciting the most about Web3 is that it can be the next evolution of the internet, where the people who participate in conversations and creating content for it also kind of get a stake or have some ownership of the environments and the
Mhm.
platforms that they're
Mhm.
participating in. So folks like you and folks like me, we create all the content. We put a lot of stuff of value out there on the internet. It's an opportunity to see if people consume that content, for us to have more of an ownership
Mhm.
of how that content is delivered, distributed, and perhaps even monetized. And I think that's like the big economic mobility piece of Web3 that is pretty exciting.
Mhm.
You may have heard that there's like people are earning like tokens these days, a
Yeah.
lot of coins, and
Mhm.
sure, some of it, yeah, can seem a little bit like frivolous, but just like the idea of currencies, of like having some kind of stake in and ownership of creating a new web and community. That's what's, I think, exciting about the Web3 space.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me when you start connecting the dots among all the different things around skills-based credentialing, new market economies, new coins emerging. I've heard, I think it was Ryan Craig was talking about skills coin, which is, the idea that if your skills are federated, or if you're federating other people's skills, that gives you some currency that then can be spent in new ways. And then that connecting to gamification and sort of how we think about how we engage with things like social media, it's easy to lose track of the fact that we're living in the future already. Even right before we started this conversation, I was looking at Snap's product demo where Snap was talking about
Yeah.
what they're doing around augmented reality and sort of the layering of additional information into what we see or hear. Those technologies are real now. And also the level to which artificial intelligence, more so than any of the other components of Web3, is already in market and is already making an impact, whereas some of these other technologies are just beginning to get into market and beginning to make an impact. The three main areas of Web3 that I've heard discussed are AR, VR, artificial intelligence, and the blockchain, the front end, the application layer, and the underlying sort of data structures and so forth. First off, is that characterization fair? It's not mine. It's stuff I've read on the internet. So please validate whether there's any validity to what I'm talking about. But assuming there is, what's your take on how those technologies may be applied to educational technology, learning contexts, the space that we're focused on?
Yeah, you brought up the idea of credentialing and kind of where that can go in the future. I think it ties back into kind of a longer running theme or objective that we've been trying to evolve in the education space. How do we track and measure and share credentials, beyond the degrees or beyond kind of like the formal traditional way that it's been happening? And so I think on the blockchain, the basic and nice thing about it is that it does capture. There's one unified place where you can capture a lot of your activities, what you do, and in ways that can perhaps kind of bypass a lot of the interoperability issues of credentials that we have seen that has been a challenge in the past. So I think that the blockchain being able to capture every action you complete online as a proof of, what you've done or what you know or who you know, I think there's a lot of potential there for that to kind of stack up and create other opportunities to kind of showcase your skills and readiness, for jobs or for careers.
Mhm.
I think there's that ongoing question of, do employers care about degrees? And so, that pendulum kind of swings back and forth. One of the most tangible ways I see kind of Web3 evolving to make an impact is this part about credentialing and being able to track your record and your contributions piece of things. So
Mhm.
it ties into credentials, it ties to like project-based learning. Yeah, and I think that's to me, one of the more exciting things about it.
Yeah.
My colleague Jamira has been, looking into this a lot deeper. She may have other elements that she can expound on that,
Yeah.
that she's also excited by, but I'm a little bit more of like a near-term visionary or kind of more of a realist. And I think the ability of the blockchain to capture your skills and demonstrate your skills is really, what I'm most excited to see.
Yeah. Joe Byra's written an article. We're hoping to get her back on Trending in Education down the road to talk about some of her deeper findings. It's good to be able to riff at a high level. That keeps podcasters employed. And there is at least a journalistic element to podcasting. Thank you for reminding me journalism is a word. So now looking ahead, the other elements we talked about, any thoughts on emerging companies or trends in the edtech space? There was a lot of investment in 2021. There was a lot of federal money that was coming in. Any macro trends? There's been a little bit of tightening of the purse strings, at least in terms of market cap. There's been some corrections that have happened. Any broader trends you're noticing? Any thoughts around where EdTech is heading? Any broader realizations maybe folks have made around what's happening in the sector?
I think the broader macroeconomic kind of plateauing or downturn is being felt across, different industries. It's being felt personally in my own portfolio, maybe yours as well.
Yeah.
I think that there has, at least as it impacts venture capital, I think the pace of investments has certainly dipped from the second half of 2021
Mhm.
in terms of deal volume and deal amount. But I think it actually is still kind of roughly on par with Q1 2021.
Mm.
Right. And so I think that's the interesting thing. Like I think like in the second half of 2021, we kind of saw that proverbial hockey stick kind of
Mhm.
growth in terms of volume and dollars. And it's gone down, but like not to like a crash or a kind of recession level, I would say.
Right.
So, I think investment pace and activity is still strong. We are still seeing a lot of companies like in our pipelines of new entrepreneurs that are building new things. Also, former entrepreneurs, people we know in the space starting, their next startup or journey. So I don't think there's any shortage of kind of people building things in the ed tech space.
Hmm.
I think that valuations may be a little bit more, they may have come, are coming down to earth. And to me, and I would dare say to reach, that's a good thing to have realistic valuations where, companies should be at various stages of the growth.
Hmm.
More broadly, the market pendulum tends to swing between growth at all costs to the realization that you need to make money. And
Yeah.
so I think that, who knew? I think we're kind of coming back to that, hey, are you building a sustainable business these days?
Yeah.
Your revenues are kind of on track with kind of your projections and your valuations and where you want to go.
Hmm.
And so, I think there's a little bit more realism coming back in the investing side. For us at Reach, I think that's great. We don't generally like to compete just on pure dollars alone.
Yeah.
That's generally just beyond us. Like it's just like not a healthy approach to investing is to compete on dollars, but you compete on, the value that you bring, the networks, the ways that you can help your portfolio or your unique knowledge about a market or an industry.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's on the investment side. Things are slowing down a little bit, but I don't think anything that's of like grave, 2008 level concerns. I think that mergers and acquisition, the pace of M&As are still going pretty strong. That,
Hmm.
I think that some of the companies that are emerging as market leaders on a global level are looking to, acquire assets to kind of further their ambitions and
Hmm.
accelerate kind of their footprints. We just had one of our companies that we invested in just, I think, over a year ago, Rhythm. We used a mental health intervention get acquired by a company called Securely. And so, we kind of enjoyed that. That's been a nice kind of journey. And so, yeah, M&As are still happening at a pretty fast clip. At ASU GSV, we've heard a lot of conversations about, people exploring, these kinds of opportunities. So
Yeah.
yeah, these things are still happening.
Yeah.
The wheel is still spinning.
Yeah. And then anything new, exciting? I know you did name check Kanye, Conan O'Brien, and you did let us know you were raised by wolves last time you were on the show. So for folks who are sticking around for more hot takes, incisive, witty repartee from Tony, we're in the free form stage of the conversation. So any concluding thoughts?
I don't know if I have any entertaining concluding thoughts this time around. Another big part of my past few months has been, the birth of our first child. And so it's been, a nice roller coaster of all the natural human emotions that come with your firstborn kid. You may actually hear him slapping, the table right now
Yeah.
as my wife is feeding him. Um, Kind of bringing it back on a more tech trends level, a thing that does continue to concern us is kind of the continued erosion of the public school system, as evidenced by teachers continuing to leave the system, student enrollments are dipping, and seeing how this can recover or if this will recover or come back. Certainly can blame educators for choosing opportunities that are sustainable to them. Many teachers are mission driven and they do that work because they care, but there's only so much you can sacrifice in terms of your personal and career ambitions and needs, right? On the other side of that is that I think we're seeing the emergence of more alternatives like online school models or hybrid school models. And these are startups that are raising money. They've raised some good amount of capital to try to see if they can serve families who are choosing to take their kids elsewhere. So there are companies like Sora Schools that we've looked at. That's a virtual project-based learning high school. Also programs like Synthesis, which is a very game-based program to help kids learn style, learn through games. And I think just today there was another alternative school called Primer that raised like $15 million. And so,
Mhm.
we're seeing kind of another track cement and emerge on this scene to serve families who kind of are looking for something else. One of our portfolio companies, Outschool, is also, they're serving both, school districts and kind of the after school homeschooling community as well, and trying to bridge the two. And so, our thesis is that, we're really strong believers in the public school system. We believe that ultimately it is where most kids will go to school, but it is what's most accessible, for the majority of families out there. But, it is concerning to see what's happening to the system, that it's not like a venture capital or like a startup problem. It is kind of a more fundamental problem of how we support the teachers and the communities. And so, yeah, I don't know, sorry to end on a little bit dour note, but
No, it's good. Yeah.
it is kind of what's like on the top of my mind these days as I'm taking a look at my 7-month-old,
Yeah.
eating his meal, and I'm thinking about, what his like schooling is going to be.
Mhm.
I went to both public and private schools, and you know, I personally would like to have him go to a public school, enjoy the diversity of experiences and people that I think the public system is kind of good, can be
Mhm.
good at attracting.
Mhm. Wow. Well, congratulations on your paternity, and on your child who's right there. So congratulations to you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
And then again, cautious optimism and then some underlying dread is sort of the, the tone there, where like, how do we change the big things is a good question. And how much of that is who's really responsible for those things? How do those larger sea changes happen is a much deeper conversation, one that we're going to need to continue to pursue, particularly around the future of public education. That was a real deep one. So thank you for showing your range. It's not always frothy. Sometimes we go deep. Appreciate you coming back on. Tony Wan from Reach Capital. Thanks again for joining.
Yes. Thank you for having me again, Michael. I look forward to the third one and my first benefit.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for listening.
And hopefully our listeners enjoyed. If you did, please write us a review. Let your friends know what we got going on. We'll be back again soon. This is Trending in Education.